So, where do we begin? Well, if you're here, we need to talk about what got you here. And for most people who are going through all this, where we begin is the night you got stopped. So, when I ask people these kinds of questions in person, I get a number of people who want to tell me about the details of the stop, how the officer treated them, how hard it was for them to walk or do field sobriety testing because they were pulled over where there was gravel or there was no roadside at all, or because it was muddy, or it was hard for them to walk because they just had their ankle worked on, or they'd suffered some kind of injury and things like that. And I understand these things happen. And I also understand that these things legitimately happen to people. They're not excuses, they're not rationalizations, but these things happen. And I understand that. And a number of those things may be important to somebody from a legal perspective. Some of those things may be important when it comes to actually dealing with the case in a courtroom. But, of course, this is not a courtroom. This is a DUI program. It doesn't make those things less important. It just means a number of those things don't really matter in this perspective, at least the things that I'm going to be asking you about. What I'm going to want to know about, and what you should be thinking about, are things like this. First, let's begin with the entire day itself. Sometimes a person doesn't get stopped, doesn't get pulled over until hours after they drank, or used, or smoked, or swallowed the pills, or whatever it was they did that led to at least the suspicion of impaired driving. So, what'd you have? When did you have it? How much of it did you have? Do you have any idea how much of it that you have? How good is your recollection? Some of my colleagues over the years that have done this kind of work will really go over some of these questions over and over again with their people. I, on the other hand, figure that if a person's taking a mind-altering substance, something that impairs their ability enough that they're going to get pulled over on suspicion of drinking or using and driving, if they're getting pulled over for suspicions of impaired driving, then one of the things that could be impaired would be their memory as to how much they drank or used or smoked or whatever. So I don't expect people to remember this all that well. But whatever it is that you do remember, that is important to put down, so please put that down. While you're doing that, keep in mind that we're sometimes using terms that are not real precise. Take, for example, drinks. A person will say, well, I had a few drinks. Okay. How many is a few? 1, 2. Even technically, the word couple means 2. That most of the clients I've worked with over the last 20 plus years will use the word couple to mean, okay, 2, 3, maybe there was a 4th, and so on and so on. That's okay, as long as ultimately the person can remember what they remember. Just be straightforward about it as best as you can. And if you don't remember, you don't remember. Don't try to make things up. At least not for me. Also be aware, though, too, that even the definition of a drink is a little vague. To illustrate this point, I have a glass, measuring utensils, and a cup of coffee. All right, so person says I had a few drinks. Okay. Well, this is a pretty common glass to use. So how much is a drink? Well, for those of you who don't cook all that much, this is a tablespoon. All right. I know it's kind of weird to dip into one's morning coffee, but it's to illustrate a point. It's all in the interests of education. How many tablespoons of distilled alcohol, whiskey, gin, vodka, and so on, how many tablespoons constitute a drink when it comes to alcohol? That many. That's a drink's worth. This, in this case, it is coffee. Honest, it is. A little cold, but it still works. Anyway, well, by the way, I might do a video a little bit later on about caffeine, but that would be another day. For the time being, though, that is the amount of alcohol we're talking about in a drink. Now, person says couple drinks. Okay. Now, a lot of people, of course, pour in water or soda of some kind, something carbonated, some kind of mixer. Fair enough. But even if somebody is free pouring, is that realistic? Yeah, I'd say probably it is. How about that much? Okay. Now, again, this doesn't seem... I should do these videos in 3D someday. Anyway, that amount doesn't seem to be all that unusual. A person could have that in a glass at a party and nobody's going to be coming up to them and saying, "Whoa, dude, that's a huge drink!" Because it doesn't look huge. However, I measured that ahead of time. That's about four drinks worth. 4 is in that number between 3 and 5. More than what a person might realize then. Often a lot more than what a person might realize. So what that means then is if a person has a couple drinks like that, if that's what the person says, what that often means in the real world is couple usually means 3, and if they're that size of 3 or 4 drinks each, what the person remembers as being 2 couple drinks in reality is probably closer to 8 or 9. So then the person says, "Well, it couldn't have been that much, because if it had been that much, I'd have felt it. I'd have been drunk." Or words to that effect, sometimes not quite that PG rated. Sometimes a little earthier. The thing is, I believe people when they say these things. I'm sure there have been people who just flat out lied about their alcohol content, but ultimately, I don't worry about it too much because it really doesn't matter whether the person is telling me what they fully remember or not, because impairment is impairment. It doesn't take a whole lot of alcohol to be impaired, and certainly it doesn't take being consciously aware of it to be impaired. Think about this. The average blood alcohol concentration level of a first-time DUI offender is about a 0.17. Now, how many drinks that takes, I'll be getting to it a little bit later on. Just to give you a real quick idea, that definition of a drink that I gave you at the beginning, with that small amount of coffee in it, if a person weighs 160 pounds, this, and maybe a little bit more, yes it did, okay. That would be about the amount of alcohol that would be needed if a person drank it all in one drink. Person weighs about 160 pounds, that much alcohol, that would be about it. That's all it would take to be about at a 0.05 to 0.08, which is legal level impairment in most states. With a 0.08 BAC, for example, that alone is usually enough in a DUI case. 0.05, 0.06, 0.07 would be enough for a DUI case if they had the BAC level plus some other evidence of impairment, like running into a tree. That plus an 0.05 would be enough for a DUI or something like that. Anyway, getting back to this 160-pound person, the 4 drinks that I'd mentioned before in an hour would get to that person about a 0.08. And as you can probably then figure out, 2 of those in an hour would double the BAC level, double the amount of alcohol, double the BAC level. And for those of you who are skilled at math, 0.08 times 2 is 0.16, which is pretty close to that 0.17 BAC that I mentioned before. So 2 of those, and that is about the average level of impairment for a first-time DUI person. It also, when you look at the research, is a BAC level where the average first-time DUI person feels okay. They do not feel impaired at a 0.16. They're not staggering, slurring, crawling on the floor, telling bad jokes, making it passes at people that they would regret later on when they wake up the following morning. Those things are not generally happening at a 0.16 BAC. And when you talk to people who witness this at parties or family get-togethers or picnics or whatever, these are generally not people that you talk to later on and say, oh yeah, everybody could tell that person was just plastered. Boy, that 0.16 BAC, that was just written all over their face. That's not happening. In part because some of those people might be slightly impaired themselves, but again, that's another video. 0.16 BAC, a person is not going to sound all that unusual. They're not going to be walking any differently. They're not. Part of it is too. I mean, at a party or get together, it's not like the person's doing advanced calculus anyway. So I mean, the person's generally not doing a whole lot that would show evidence of impairment. I mean, part of the idea of being at a club, family get together, or whatever, is that people get to relax. They don't really have. You're kind of in your comfort level. Okay. I mean, most people are not going out to clubs or get-togethers and saying, okay, we're gonna talk to one another about, you know, advanced nuclear dynamics. Go. You know. If they did, maybe the person show a little impairment, assuming the person knew anything about that kind of stuff to begin with, which I don't. But anyway, what do you have to do at a party? What do you have to do at a family get-together? What do you have to do when you're having fun? Talk, maybe. Dance, maybe. Or just kind of move back and forth. You know, the physical requirements and the emotional, mental requirements are generally pretty limited. You don't have to do anything. It's only then when the person leaves and they turn the ignition on, they head out into the road, okay, now things start getting a little more complicated. And that's, of course, when the problem starts, if the person doesn't have transportation set up ahead of time. These are all things to think about now. These are things to be thinking about, too, when a little bit down the road we start talking about DUI prevention planning. What's the person going to do to stop this from happening? The first thing has to be that the person be aware of all of this, that the impairment is occurring long before the person is consciously aware of it. Fairly low blood alcohol concentration levels, for example, will affect depth perception. It will affect side vision. it will affect what sometimes is called fine motor work, fine motor actions. Even in an automatic transmission vehicle, there's still a lot of physical body coordination that goes on, even if you're not physically shifting. You still have to be looking ahead, you need to look to the side, you need to look at the rearview mirror, you need to be consciously aware of how much pressure your foot is applying on a gas pedal or a brake pedal. And obviously, if it's a manual transmission, then there's a third pedal that gets involved in all of this. And this is all often going on when there is this fairly powerful drug in the system, alcohol or whatever else the person's using, that's at least slightly impairing everything. Plus, of course, a lot of DUIs, a lot of stops occur at night, on weekends. Whatever noise was going on, the fun, the excitement, whatever was going on at the party, at the club, an event, is gone now. And the person's driving, and they're relaxing, and there's the hum of the road, maybe a breeze. If it's too cold outside, maybe the person's got the heater on, and they relax. Slow down. What about the person who says, I just closed my eyes. I wasn't that drunk. I wasn't driving that fast. All right? But consider this. Even driving 30 miles an hour is still about 40 feet a second. A little bit more than that, in fact. 40 feet. Your average room in a house might be 12 to 20 feet. And by the time you get to 20 feet, you're talking about generally a pretty big room. So that's a lot of distance that a person driving 30 miles an hour is covering in 1 second. What if the person closes their eyes for a fraction of a second? Okay. Again, you can do the math. 1/10 of 1 second could still be easily 4 feet. Small adults, kids, 4 feet tall. And if a person is operating a vehicle that has thousands of pounds of thrust and force, it's a pretty big deal if there's anything in the way. That's why all of these things matter. That's why we have the system that we have. That's why it's really important for you and the people that you care about to have us all understood, so that you do whatever it is that needs to be done to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And at that, we are at 18 minutes and an odd number of seconds. So that's a pretty good introduction for right now. And check out some of the other videos to help you with the rest of this. For now, be safe, be well,